Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
This music sounds too X-Files-ish, Robin.
Yeah.
I want Holiday Road by Lindsey Buckingham. Well, he's going through some crazy times right now, huh? They kicked him out of Fleetwood Mac. What's going on with that?
I know, they're ridiculous.
But anyway, I should have that song on here, except that then YouTube wouldn't allow me to put this video up.
I know, that's depressing.
So that's why we have to use these generic songs. Hey, one of my favorite topics is traveling. I don't travel as much as I would like to. We have some friends that do, though. Oh, my gosh. So I travel vicariously through other people and through magazines. Mm-hmm. National Geographic Traveler magazine, the January 2019 issue is out, I think. George Stone will know. He's on the phone. He's the award-winning editor-in-chief of National Geographic Traveler magazine. I found it on Amazon. You can subscribe to this thing for $10 a year.
This is great.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
George Stone. Good morning, George. Thank you.
Good morning. There is no better gift this holiday season. It could be late for Hanukkah. It could be early for Christmas. It will give you joy all year long. Subscribe to National Geographic. Yay.
And I love the magazine. It's available as Kindle also, and to each his own. But for me, maybe because I'm old, I like the paper. I like holding it.
Yes, I too am a paper person, and I think the big question for people who are working in media and paper, and it's the same as radio, it's like, what is the very best content you can do in your format? So what is the best radio content? And for us at National Geographic especially, it's like, we have this beautiful paper, it's a big sheet. How can we, what kind of photographs can we put on? What kind of information that really inspires people to think about the world in a different way, and especially in the travel space, inspires people to want to go somewhere?
So how do people normally read the magazine? And what I guess I'm going to tell you how I do it. It's like when I was graduating from one of, I think, elementary school, the principal said, I'd like to take the bottom off the cupcake and get rid of it first so I can save the best for last. But the way I do the magazine, your magazine, I look at the pictures. I'll look through the whole magazine first, maybe read a headline or two. And so the pictures is what I do first, and then I come back, and then I'll read whatever article seems to be interesting to me. Am I unusual in that one?
No, you're very normal. The doctor is in, and I'm here to tell you you're very normal, and you're going to do well. I'm also very happy that you didn't tell me exactly where in your house you like to read the magazine. So,
oh no, I'm not a bathroom guy. I never understood that. I never understood that.
I think that's disgusting. So, So I too, and I would say that the majority of National Geographic Traveler readers come in for the pictures. So, National Geographic has been around since 1888 and is celebrated for images, and images especially of rugged landscapes or wild animals, or people from far away. And these are the things that I think are just human touchstones. We relate to the world around us, and it's kind of magical to get a chance to take a break and really see a new place and to immerse yourself in a picture. And I think that, incidentally, is why paper can be so powerful. Instagram is an amazing tool, but, those pictures fly by.
Yeah,
so
right.
Yeah, you have your magazine, and it's also like you're a smart shopper. You're like looking around the magazine saying, my time is valuable. Exactly where am I going to put it? And so you sample the goods a little bit, and you say, what am I feeling like? And so then maybe you end up, on a story. We have this beautiful story on Oman about riding Arabian horses, and it's a fascinating yarn, and it's a kind of old-fashioned tale that's all about adventure and going off the beaten path near the Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Oman, off the Persian Gulf. And it's an old world, beautiful tale. And so that's an adventure story in this issue. And then another story for people who are just like in love with beaches. We have this amazing story on Tahiti in French Polynesia. And that's all about finding the elusive fifth element of mana, which is sort of like bringing the world together in happiness.
Yeah.
But in that section also for nature, you have a county in our state, Florida, South Walton County. And that's beautiful.
Exactly right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what we try to do at National Geographic Traveler is make sure that we got destinations that are the best for the year to come, but are also, accessible places where people really can go and places that have amazing stories to tell. So South Walton County, Florida, is doing this remarkable coastal conservation work. And it's not easy because I believe the region itself has pulled together 16 communities to try to agree on priorities for preservation and efforts, to combat coastal erosion. So, like anyone who just tries to get like 6 people together for the holidays knows how hard it is to make anything happen. South Walton County has got like 16 communities together in the face of things like hurricanes and red tides, and they're really doing a great job to protect the shores and surface some cool things like the world's first permanent underwater museum of art, which is at Grayton Beach State Park.
Wow,
see,
that is
and
amazing.
you and Robin just touched on something I wanted to say, is that I look at the magazine to vicariously travel places that I may never ever go to in reality, but then it's also cool to see Florida or Georgia or New York or places I'm familiar with, because guess what? I haven't been every place in those places. So so it's kind of cool to see that stuff too, knowing, oh my gosh, I can just hop in the car and go to this thing that's right here.
Totally, and I think it's so important. I think travel, if travel becomes just this rare, sacred, big thing, bucket list that only happens once in a while, no one's really going to get to go many times. They're not going to get that daily joy, or not daily, but maybe, periodic pleasure of going someplace and being a fish out of water, where you discover cool new things. Like just last weekend, I'm in Washington, D.C., but I took the Bolt bus for $38 up to New York last weekend, and I went to 3 museums, saw amazing shows. I saw Rockefeller Center. I saw the big Christmas tree. I saw a proposal happen on the ice rink at Rockefeller Center.
Nice.
That was, everybody clapped. And the groom was so wobbly on his ice skates. Everyone was like, "Wow, this is not pretty much not going to go well." Or but he didn't fall. But if he did fall, it would still been a lesson.
Right. Sure.
Not everything's perfect, even in marriage. But I just think it's so important for everybody, when they can, to get out of the bubble, and it could be to a regional or state park nearby. It could be a city somewhere, but just to shake the head, to break loose a little bit, and remember that there's so much joy in discovery.
I actually think you just hit on something that is the reason we like to travel, and it's to be with people. I really think that we are created to be social, at least sometimes, and just being, even if you're not talking to anybody, but you're just with a bunch of people. I don't know. It's like when you go to Disney World at New Year's Eve. Forget it. You're one organism.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it is.
I love the fact that you've got it broken down into sections, one for culture, one for adventure, one for nature, and one for cities. And I think the adventure is probably really fascinating, because we always see these huge greenery areas with big gigantic waterfalls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when I go out to nature place, and like one that we write about is called the Bisti Wilderness in New Mexico, which is sort of northwestern New Mexico, and it's this landscape full of these shale mountains that kind of look like they have umbrellas on top. They're hills that have eroded in a funny way. And when I go out there, I like to let this scene wash over my eyes, and I imagine that it's making like an imprint on my brain, and then I breathe in, because it's so rare and beautiful just to be away. And, a waterfall shot, just an amazing beach. You get to be with yourself, think a little bit, and just try to capture that moment. And I think that's the sort of yin and yang of travel too. Larry was saying how important it is to see other people, and I love that too, because I think when you use travel as a way to get to meet other people, you actually also develop your ability to talk to people you don't know from other cultures. And sometimes people who, their language is different and it's a little hard to communicate, but you build up that skill. And when you come back home, I think you're a little bit more open to talking to all sorts of people that you see every day. And I think it's similar when you go see a beautiful wilderness. It sticks with you.
This is deeply rooted in me. I remember as a kid, my uncle Henry in Connecticut. We'd go up to see him in Connecticut, and he had this Kodak carousel slide projector, right? And he'd bring it out, and I'd hear people groan, "Oh no!" But I'd say, "Oh my gosh, I love this!" Because then Uncle Henry, because he worked for CBS, and he used to go all over the world, and he'd show all these pictures of these slides, and I loved it. I know the family mostly groaned, but I loved it. It was I just loved seeing those things.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the deeply rooted need and I think desire that people have for stories to be told to them. And it's like being a kid a little bit,
right?
But it's also just a part of how we communicate. And even, I remember those slideshows as well. And, there's something excruciatingly boring about watching your grandfather or uncle's slideshow. and yet there's something totally magical because you're seeing something that's kind of beautiful and weird, and it's not about you, but there's something in it for you, and it means something to someone else. And if they're a good storyteller, they're going to make it mean something to you.
Yeah, and really, you just described what you guys do. I mean, you are storytellers, and we actually have an associate. He's a friend, I guess. He's a photographer for National Geographic. He lives in our community.
Mark Emery.
And every time we bump into him, he's got a huge camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under your section of culture, you have the Bauhaus Trail in Germany. What is that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and because I'm excited about it. Bauhaus was a design movement that's celebrating 100 years this year. So it was founded in 1919 in Germany, in Weimar, Germany, and then it settled into Berlin. But the idea behind Bauhaus is about functional design, which is very contemporary right now. And so Bauhaus design principles were about stripping away unnecessary embellishment on buildings. So if you can imagine old German or French buildings that have all these sort of doilies and frosting on them, this was partly an idea saying design is a part of our life. Design must function for our lives. Design includes everything from textiles to typefaces, furniture, and wallpaper and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it's not purely minimalist, though it becomes associated with square buildings and very functional clocks and kind of utilitarian, communities in Europe. But the Bauhaus sensibility absolutely extends to our present time. It extends to Steve Jobs' design sensibility, where form and function are merged into an iPad or iPhone. And it's really it's a philosophy, but it's trying to strip away things that are unnecessary and to enable people to live in a more functional way, to get their work done somewhat more functionally. And so within that minimalism of Bauhaus, there's also really an extreme beauty.
Wow.
We're talking about National Geographic Traveler magazine. On the phone with us is editor-in-chief of that magazine, George W. Stone. You've won some awards for your work, and it's easy to see why you would. I can't think of a magazine that does what you do better than what you do.
Oh, well, thank you.
But I wanted to ask you something. Because you mentioned in the beginning that we could subscribe to this as a gift, right?
Yes.
So where do I do that?
That is nice of you to ask, and I thank you, Larry.
Well, I want to do it. I'm going to get it for my son.
Well, you can go to natgeotravel.com.
Okay. All right.
So that's the National Geographic Travel website, and you can root around. There's also nationalgeographic.com/shop. And you can get subscriptions for Traveler Magazine, for National Geographic Magazine, and you can support the National Geographic Society in tons of different ways. So National Geographic Society it writes grants for scientific research and conservation efforts, and then National Geographic Traveler and Nat Geo Magazine write about the fruits of these research efforts.
Oh my gosh! Well, you've got a couple of subscriptions coming from me for the listeners.
Oh, thank you.
For the listeners, okay. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. It's $10 a year, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like it is. You cannot go wrong. It is. It's a great deal. And it's and it's sort of a wonderful thing to. So some people are like, well, what do I need a magazine coming through my mailbox for? I'll tell you,
because they're awesome.
Because they're awesome. Because I mean, yes, we have a very good website, and we have wonderful images on our Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. That's fine. That wherever you go, there it will be. But the magazine experience is about giving yourself something, about taking time to let your imagination run wild, and taking a break from the from the information all around us and just really figuring out what are you curious about.
Yeah.
So, one of the books that you've written, Extreme Earth: A Journey Through the World's Most Dangerously Beautiful Places, are some of those included on your list in the magazine?
Some of them in a way. So that book was all about disasters, tornadoes, hurricanes. I know, and but really the forces of nature and that define the planet, and that's like totally in the National Geographic space of kind of content, but also these forces define us. So I mean, you look at Florida. Florida has really been challenged in the last year, with hurricanes, with storms, with red tide, with these natural events. Some of the time they're cyclical, some of the time they're just sort of random. So these forces do define our lives and our landscape, and then they also, in a roundabout way, kind of end up challenging the economies of places and the way people live in places. So travel and tourism actually has a big role to play. One of the reasons we wanted to focus on South Walton is, first, that our readers love Florida. Everyone loves Florida and wants to go there, but a lot of readers have questions like, well, what happened with the hurricanes, or what's up with the red tide? Where can I go? So as a travel magazine, the idea is to try to surface new ideas of new places to go, and then we also recognize that when places have been challenged a little bit, like tourism can really come to the rescue. It can deliver a lot of revenue.
Oh yeah. The hurricane that tore up Key West. I don't know if you know this Fantasy Fest. Are you familiar with Fantasy Fest?
No,
it's a big it's a big Mardi Gras type of thing that happens in Key West, and I don't know how many people. I don't know if millions is the right number, but a lot of people show up for this thing, and it literally brought back that area after they were devastated. I can't remember which hurricane it was, 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the people who came, they didn't stay away. They were afraid. The people in Key West were afraid. Oh my gosh, nobody's going to show up for Fantasy Fest this year, and what are we going to do? Because that's our money. And but they did. They showed up. Well, who wouldn't? I mean, it's sunshine. It's naked people, and everybody's
Everybody's happy.
They know more. People. Yeah. I mean, but that's I mean, and I think that's so cool for people to do that. They make a priority to support something, also to do something that they're really interested in, and then to go back again and again. And and that's a culture festival in a great place. It's not even easy to get to. and especially after a hurricane.
Right.
And so you really got to applaud. And so that's the story of a lot of places in the U.S., cities that have turned to tourism, but they've done it in a conscientious way where they're saying, okay, look, the number one job of a city or of a destination or of a place is to provide for the locals and to make sure that the locals are happy and get what they want. Tourism can help. So when locals are happy, that's usually a place where tourists go and have a really good time. So...
Do you know, I wanted to say something that when you live in Florida, a lot of people ask you, what can we see? What would you recommend? And everybody knows Disney, so you don't even usually say that.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to. But I always say this. Let me use Key West just as an example. I would say you got to go to Key West during Fantasy Fest. And then I will say, but you also have to go there when it's not Fantasy Fest. Because it's like two different... It'd be like New Orleans in... Mardi Gras and New Orleans normal, because they're both beautiful.
Yeah, and I've talked to people. There's so many interesting things in Florida. I think Crystal River is one that there's a lot of wildlife watching and bird life watching and small sort of adventurous but not too hardcore adventurous sort of expeditions you can do, canoeing trips. And you can really see that, this is a massive state. Florida is a massive state that has so many different regions, and and they're not just Disney, not just theme parks, and not just beaches so much.
Right. So, yeah, and I think that's what your magazine helps. In addition to living vicariously through you guys, it also gives us some bucket list things like, oh my gosh, I got to go see this, before I kick the bucket.
You brought up Isla de los Estados in Argentina.
Yes, and that's a dream trip, and you're right. It's fair to say, okay, what's a bucket list, and what can we do all the time? So, in the Argentine portion of Tierra del Fuego, really at the tip, southernmost tip of South America. Is this beautiful island, beach forests and mountains and icy fjords,
Wow.
And it's storybook beauty, and it's a kind of untouched place. So a friend of mine, when we build this list, we talk to our photographers and our writers and our readers and all the editors at National Geographic to create our best trips list for the next year. And so my friend Krista Rosso, who's a photographer, and maybe she knows your photographer, Mark Emery. I bet she does. She goes to far off places both as a photographer and as a guide for National Geographic tours, and she just couldn't say enough about Islas de los Estados in Argentina, and that's because it's like, where can you go to have this far away experience where, like again for me, like your eyes and your brain get washed over with this massive, almost sensory overload visual of endless wild and beauty that is so rare to see, and it kind of sticks with you, and it makes you realize the world is still big, even though it feels small.
It makes me curious. Isla de los Estados means island of the states, right?
Oh,
correct.
So So that makes you curious. Why is it called that? Why is it called Island of the States?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea. A good question. Let's see. Let's come up with an answer real fast. I don't know. I mean, there are possibly it could relate to the number of states in Argentina. It could be related to I don't know, just this sort of idea that it depicts and encapsulates some of the qualities of Argentina overall. That's a good question. I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out the answer.
Oh, good. Good. Then you can call it.
I don't know how. I'm going to call my friend Krista Rosso.
Oh my gosh, you represent our, first of all, the most fun interview we've had today. Thank you for being on the air with us. And also, I just love the magazine, and I'm going to order it for my son, and I don't know who else except for me. So I got at least two. I'm going to give myself a gift.
Oh, well, that is awesome. I do think that, like, it's like some of the time Christmas, here's how it should be. It's like when you're on the airplane and they say, okay, now, like, the airbags are going to fall from the ceiling. Take a breath of oxygen before you give it to the person next to you.
Right.
You know, maybe Christmas should be a little more like that, where you make sure you get what you want out of this crazy holiday.
That's right.
And then it's very good to take care of the people around you, but there's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself.
So, I like that. So tell me again the website. I just went to it, and I was looking at the ice hotels, by the way.
Oh, nice.
Which I can't imagine. That one, I don't know if I want to do that one. That looks cold.
Yeah. Well, so you can go to natgeotravel.com, and that's the National Geographic Traveler website, and our best trips for 2019 list is all over that. And then if you want to subscribe, you could go to nationalgeographic.com/subscribe, and you can see all these cool magazines. So it's Traveler Magazine, which is where I work and I'm so proud of. But there's also National Geographic Magazine. There's National Geographic History for history buffs. There's Kids, which is an awesome little magazine for kids. And then there's even one for little kids who know even fewer words.
Oh, really?
The magazine is called Little Kids.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
So,
nice.
So go to nationalgeographic.com/subscribe, and all these magazines are there. And honestly, they're like dirt cheap. They make a phenomenal gift. And it's also just fun to have something in the mail and to lose yourself in it.
Oh, you said it so right, and you just sold me on a whole bunch more gifts.
Okay.
When you told me about the little kids part, yeah, absolutely.
Little Kids is super cute. I mean, you don't even have to be a little kid. Maybe you're a grown up and you're too tired to read words at the end of the day. You can just get Little Kids.
That's right. That's what I do at the doctor's office.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just show me the pictures.
Oh my gosh! Well, you are so fun, George. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. That was fun.
Oh, my pleasure, Larry and Robin. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we'll be right back.
WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Here is your 1-minute news brief. The Marion County School Board is planning to purchase new school buses to replace the aging buses that are currently being used. The new buses will be air-conditioned. Over 400 marine scientists have